Hi guys, Redneck Computer Geek here. Not my usual video, but I've seen a lot of discussion about the Chinesium import Section 8 changes that are going on right now. And a lot of people are speculating as to whether they think it's going to hurt or kill the small engine market, whether they think it's going to drastically castrate it, and things like that. So I wanted to throw my 2 cents in because I've been working off and on with Chinesium import product now consistently for about 10 years. Specifically, HIPAA carburetor going on my 4th or 5th year at this point. And let me just point out something. So, back about 8 years ago, if you were in the small engine world, you probably remember the OP carburetor wars of Briggs and Stratton. And basically, Briggs and Stratton was saying that their OP carburetors were made here in the United States, and they were selling them for $140 to $160 a piece. We're talking a 25-year-old OP design carburetor. And a company called Labworks from China came in, and they started marketing an OP carburetor on Amazon for about 50 bucks. And it was just as good as the Briggs & Stratton carburetors. It worked perfect. I mean, it's an OP, for God's sake. They just run on anything. You could probably go and put a tickle bottle on an OP and run it without the carburetor if you wanted to. And so they ended up causing a drastic shift in the carburetor market that year. And all of a sudden, magically, Briggs & Stratton went from trying to get $140 to $160 for that carburetor to the very next summer, magically, they were capable of selling a Briggs & Stratton carburetor for $80. So it was only about $30 more than the Chinesium part, and so therefore people switched back to buying the OP carburetor from Briggs & Stratton. And that is a prime example of when a competitive market brings prices down to a reasonable level. If Briggs & Stratton was capable of bringing it down to $80 and still making a profit, then that means 80 to 140 was their previous profit margin that they were scalping their customers for. And that's part of why people shifted to the Chinesium market so harshly over the last 8 to 10 years. Now, let's understand a little bit about how this Type 86 thing works and how it will affect our small engine market and how it won't affect our small engine market. Type 86 is shipping from China packages, primarily air freight. It will affect packages coming in shipping container package situations, potentially. But primarily it is targeting, there we go, I can talk this morning, $800 and less air freight packages. They're not after the small engine market. What they're after is Temu and things of that nature that are horrifically bypassing tax import law of about 19% taxes. And that is what they're after. They're not after $15 carburetors. They're after $800, just barely under the tax import law, things like laptops and screens and anything that Temu is marketing in order to be able to bypass that 19%. They don't care about 19% on $15. They care about 19% on $800. That is drastically different. Now, here's what I project we're going to see. I project that smart Chinesium, like HIPAA carburetor, has already shifted so that what they do is they don't order parcel package from China. What they do is they order a giant shipping container worth of, say, Kohler single carburetors, say 20,000 of them, They set up a horrifically cheap warehouse that just has shipping containers in it that they deliberately pull from. They use US Postal Service or UPS for larger shipments, and they go directly from the warehouse to the customer. Now, that is horrifically different because they're paying tax. But they're paying tax directly here in the United States, which means that it's much lower, but at least they're paying something. Temu, on the other hand, and places like that, like VM22 carburetors, I can order from Temu. And Temu pays no ship-in tax on that. What I project we're going to see is that we're going to see those companies shift from Temu to being more like HIPAA carburetor. Now, during that shift, let's say lab work, for example, which still does direct shipment from China, last I knew, what we're going to see, if you particularly like that company and ordering those carburetors, is that instead of being able to 4 or 5 day, what you're going to end up with is about 3 weeks. Because they're saying that the average checkover time is going to increase from about 2 days to about 15 to more days worth of check-in during this transition. So it's not that you can't get the parts, it's that you need to preemptively plan that your Chinesium stuff could be upwards of 3 weeks of transition time through check-in instead of the usual 3 days. Now, what I think is that if you're a small engine shop, you should already be stockpiling on known problematic parts. Briggs & Stratton single head gaskets, prime example. Coils for certain lawn tractors are known to just drop dead in the heat. They just do it. So you should have a stockpile. Or for mouse nest season, you should have a stockpile. You should be keeping track already on what your usage is so that you know that you can preemptively stockpile for the next season, but watching for engine drop-offs. You know, certain engines, they go through an age and then manufacturers discontinue them and they start to drop off in popularity and number. And so you shouldn't be stockpiling for those engines, obviously. But there are certain parts that are just plain universal that you should be buying in bulk anyway. Fuel filters, for example. I don't care whether the tractor is 40 years old or whether the tractor is 2 years old. A fuel filter is a fuel filter. You should be stockpiling those. Fuel line, for example, you should be buying in bulk and stockpiling. But your stockpiling planning, if you're doing Chinesium, now potentially needs to be at a basis of 3 weeks out instead of a week out. And we're going to see a lot of that change. But that's my thoughts on the current shift in the marketing on Chinesium product. If you could, feel free to throw me a comment on what you think about what I've said here or what your thoughts are on how you intend to deal with it. I'd be curious to see, because I know that it is starting to affect the companies that I work with, and it's going to affect a lot of the other companies too. Have a good day and throw me a comment. Tell me what you think.